So, today we will do a much simpler version of our third-person controller, since a lot of you had problems with the previous one, or it was too advanced for most of the games people want to make. I decided to let's simplify the whole process of this controller, and we're actually going to use some stuff we've already covered from previous videos. Now there are some significant changes. For instance, we're only using 3 animations over here. Okay, so we do not have a pretty complex blend tree anymore. And I've also added a jump. Of course, it will help if I had better animations for jump. Okay, since you were always asking how you can do a jump, but I don't remember seeing a good third-person game that had good jump mechanics. If it was, then Assassin's Creed wouldn't have it so much linear on their movement and their jump, and anyway. So, as usual, create an empty game object and beneath it drop the character model. Okay, make sure all these are zeroed out except the scale, of course, and that it has an animator, and this doesn't need to have an animator controller also. Then on our player, on the game object we created, create an empty on the empty game object we just created, add an animator, add the animator controller, which we will see in a bit how we have set up the animations, add a rigid body, raise the drag to something like 4, angular drag to a high value, okay, use gravity, it's not a kinematic, freeze rotation freeze rotation on X and Z, the capsule collider that covers the whole character, and then the script which we will see in a bit. Okay, now let's see. As for the camera, it's exactly the same as all the other videos. Okay, camera holder, pivot, main camera, with all the effects applied. If you want to have all these effects, I'm just adding it for whatever reason, and then the usual script we drop into all of our cameras. Okay, drop the player, not the model, but the game object, into the target. You will find, of course, the scripts in the description below, and then it will follow around the player, and then raise the pivot around where we want our camera to orbit around, and then the main camera, pull it back however you see fit. Okay, you cannot move up and down. So, the animator. Now, in a previous controller, which is one of the first videos I've created for the channel, if you remember, we had a whole list of animations, and we actually had 2D freeform Cartesian. It has around 10 animations, but as you see, with our new way, we're only going to use a one-dimensional blend tree. Okay, so when the forward is at 0, it will play the idle animation. When it's at 0.5, it will start walking, and then when it's at 1, it will start running. Now, since we are not using we won't be using any root motion, we don't care that he's running at an angle right now. So the next thing we need to do is have the values, have the animations for jumping, and this is one single animation, but I've broken it up into different parts. Okay, this is the beginning of the jump, this is from the beginning of the jump to staying on the air, and then when he needs to land. And of course his foot needs a little fixing, but I'm pretty sure you can do that without me. And of course when you are landing you don't need to do anything else. Now let's see the transitions. Of course, make the new parameters. Okay, we need a parameter boolean on air, jump position. I'm not using it, I think. Pretty sure I'm not using it. Anyway, let's delete it. So yes, so a trigger on jump, and when the trigger is set, we do not want exit time, it will right away start jumping. Okay, it will pass with exit time on the mid-air animation, and then when on air is on false, he will land on the ground, and then in turn with exit time he will return to his previous animation. Now of course you can play around with this, you might not want exit time, choose a little bit how you want it to have. Now of course these animations are not that great, and this controller is not for realistic characters, it's for easier ones. Okay, so if you have cartoon characters, they will be it will look more natural even though they are cartoonish. So let's see our player control script. Now 0 friction, max friction, these are all from the standard assets. Okay, and then see the for max friction, dynamic friction at 1, static friction at 1, and 0 friction all 0, and friction combined multiply. Okay, let's see our script. So our component variables pretty much the same as with always. Rigid body, animator, our capsule collider, which I don't, oh yeah, we're using it. The two physics materials and the transform of the camera. Now we need variables for the speed, turn speed and jump power, and turn speed, and this speed actually I'm going to set it as 0.8. Okay, and how much force will be applied to the jump. The direction we want to look at, where we look at, using a case, so we don't actually need this right now. And the store direction is somewhere where we store our direction. Our inputs over here, and our boolean if we are on the ground or not. Then, and actually don't need even this. This is pretty much the same as the top-down controller, more only fixed for third-person view. Okay, so as I was saying, rigid body, camera, the transform of the camera, and then the capsule collider. Setup animator. I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the setup animator. Okay, find the first animator, get the avatar, destroy that animator, and use the avatar on the animator we are using right now. So that's with the start. On update we have the handle friction, which handle friction is simply if there is no input, change the material to max friction, the physics material to max friction, and if we are moving, then we do not want any friction, or you might want some friction. You can play with the properties of the physics material and decide what you want to do, and then if we are moving, then use 0 friction. Okay, there goes the handle friction. So are inputs inside fixed update, since we are using physics. Horizontal, get axis horizontal, vertical, get axis vertical, and jump input, which is a bool. If input get down jump, then jump input is true. Now we need to store the direction which we want to use. Now by default it will automatically go to the right of the camera, and if you want, well, actually you can read this, you can pause the video and read this, why we have this over here. I'm not going to explain it. So if we are on the ground, then add force to a rigid body with a stored direction multiplied by the horizontal plus our camera forward multiplied by the vertical input, and all this multiplied by speed subdivided by time dot delta time. Okay, so based on whatever input we have, then we simply move towards where the player is looking. Now since if you want to do the stuff, if you want the game to behave like over here that I mentioned, then you have to use you have to save the direction of the right camera, since it will work that way. So you can change it or not. If you do not want that behavior, simply instead of store dir add camera dot right into our horizontal. Okay, then if we are on the ground and there is jump input, play the jump animation and add force to the rigid body on vector3 dot tap. Okay, and force mode impulse. Pretty simple stuff. Now of course this is not a variable jump. This will jump, it will give the force all at the same time and only for one frame. So let's move. Next, now of course this moves our character, but it doesn't rotate him around towards where we want him to look. So we need to find the position from where the camera is looking. Okay, then we have our direction position, which is a transform dot position plus the stored direction we have multiplied by the horizontal plus the camera forward multiplied by our vertical input. Okay, and this will give us pretty much a direction. It will give us the direction towards where the camera is looking, and from basically where we have to a vector towards where the character has to move. Okay, so we have that vector. We need to find the direction towards where we want to rotate, and that we simply subtract from the direction position our transform dot position, and we make the y at 0, since we do not want to subtract anything from the y, otherwise he will be rotating up and down. Okay, and then we are not yet rotating, we are doing it over here, but before we start rotating, we want to apply the values on the animator so that he can start he can start running. So we need an animator value to pass inside the animator, but since he will always be running whichever key we're pressing, even if we are moving right or up and down or forward and backwards, he will always be walking or running. Okay, so that way we can take the absolute value of the vertical input and the absolute value of the horizontal input. Okay, and we can add them together. Now the blend tree doesn't go over 1. Okay, so even if I'm pressing both keys at the same time, so the character is moving diagonally, then the only thing so it won't happen anything. The animator value, the blend tree, will clamp at 1 anyway. But if you're feeling your OCD kicking in, then you can just clamp the animator value from 0 to 1. Okay, and since we have the animator value, then simply pass it to the animator with dump time and of course time.delta time. Now if there is movement, that means we have movement from the player, so the player is pressing a button. We need to find the angle between where the character is looking and where the character we want him to look at. Okay, so if it's not 0, if it's 0 you will get a warning, not an error, a warning. You can, but since you can do that so that you do not clutter your console every time you run it. Okay, so we find the angle first and we say if the angle is not at 0, which is exactly the warning you are getting if you do not add this this if statement, then we rotate our rigid body with a quaternion dot spherical lerp from our transform dot rotation towards the quaternion dot look rotation, and we pass the dir vector 3, which is the direction we have over here, we found over here. Okay, and then how fast we want to turn towards that direction. Pretty simple, and that's about it from fixed update. Now since we want to jump, we need to check if we are on the ground or not. Okay, this is where everybody had a problem with the previous video, because that raycast and sorting the first hits was a little bit complicated for most. So a simpler way, but it's not completely over here, since you have to think how you are going to decide what is the floor. Okay, so on collision enter, collision other, of course you need to pass this. On ground equals through, we need to raise the drag of the rigid body. Okay, so otherwise all the forces that are going to be applied, your character will fly away. Okay, and we need to change the bool from the animator on air to false, since we are not on the air. Okay, now for instance, if you are using a tag to decide which is the floor, you can use if other.gameObject.tag equals floor. Okay, and do that then. But since I'm not doing it right now, I haven't set up, and since it's pretty easy for you to do it, I will not mess more time with it. So on collision exit will be the exact same thing. Okay, on ground equals false, rigid body drag, we make a drag to 0 so that we do not have any drag when we are on the air. If we have drag on the air, then you see your object fall slowly. Okay, so when we are on the air, we do not want any drag, and then make the boolean of on air on the animator to be true. Okay, and that's pretty much it. And let's see over here. Okay, when we're on the ground, we're applying forces, and if we save, start, we did it, update hidden frictions, and that's it. So if we hit play, you will see that for some reason this happens. So let's see why this happens. And we have an error for some reason. And we actually deleted the forward. Yeah. Instead of deleting jump position, I deleted the forward. And let's just do that again. So you will see now that it plays as it should be. Okay, can jump. And of course, since this is not something that relies too heavily on animations or any game, any specific game, you can come in here and say and remove the camera forward or vertical, or better yet, let me copy paste that. And now if I close this, hit play, you will see that for some reason, oh yeah, it still plays because we forgot something. And let me think a little bit what it was. And I think, yes, on the direction you also need to remove this. And now you will see that he looks towards there, but he can't go. So let's think a little bit why that is. And I think that has to be it. I think. And you can also delete this, but anyway, let's see it now. And yes, you will see that you can move on forward or towards the other way of the camera, only if you move the camera around, if you rotate the camera. So that means you pretty much have a platformer right now. Okay, so that's basically it for this video. Now this video was pretty much shorter, but I didn't have a lot of time to create something new. I'm working on a new series for the channel. If you watch the live stream, you might get a hint of what it is. And I'm currently working on releasing our game Carnivore Land, which we will have a release date probably in the week. I will announce a release date, or the weekend. We will see how it goes. Okay, so next week we will do something very interesting. It's something I wanted to do a lot of time, a long time before. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can support me on patreon.com, where with $5 or more you can get access to a Google folder where I drop all the scripts from my videos, and in turn you will be helping me create more videos, because in case you didn't know, this take time. Okay, and I don't want to just make videos just to fill content on the channel. I want to make some stuff that's pretty interesting to do, as the Besiege video you saw in the previous week. Okay, so if you can consider supporting me, so that we can have more cool stuff and, you know, more interesting stuff to do than simply controllers like this. Okay, so I'll see you next time.